Have you ever walked into a room knowing that everyone had already judged you before you even spoke a single word? Imagine being a single mother desperately hoping for one opportunity to change your child's future, only to realize that the very thing people are judging you for might become the reason your life changes forever. What happened when one single mom brought her little boy to a CEO job interview, left an entire corporate office speechless, and by the end of this story, you'll understand why kindness has the power to open doors that money never can. Before we begin, if stories of compassion, hope, and life-changing moments inspire you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to Kindness of Power for more heartwarming stories. Also, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment below with your city and country. Your comments help us build a beautiful, global family of kindness. The morning sun barely peeked through, the gray clouds hanging over downtown Chicago as 29-year-old Sarah Bennett stood outside one of the tallest office buildings in the city. Her hands trembled slightly as she checked the time on her phone for what felt like the 100th time. Today was supposed to be the most important day of her life. Sarah had spent nearly 3 years raising her 7-year-old son, Ethan, entirely on her own. Her husband had passed away unexpectedly when Ethan was only 4 years old, leaving her with heartbreak, mounting bills, and a future filled with uncertainty. Since then, she had worked countless part-time jobs, from waiting tables during late-night shifts to stocking supermarket shelves before sunrise. Every penny she earned went towards paying rent, buying groceries, and ensuring Ethan never went to bed hungry. There were nights when Sarah quietly skipped dinner so Ethan could have seconds. There were mornings when she smiled through exhaustion simply because her little boy deserved to see hope reflected in her eyes. For months, Sarah had been searching for stable employment. Then came the opportunity she had prayed for, a management position at one of the city's fastest-growing technology companies. The salary was more than she had ever dreamed of earning. It included healthcare benefits, flexible working arrangements, and enough financial security to finally give Ethan the childhood he deserved. There was only one problem. Her babysitter had canceled 30 minutes before the interview. Sarah had called everyone she knew. Her neighbor was working. Her cousin was out of town. The local daycare couldn't accept walk-ins without prior registration. She was running out of time, and missing the interview wasn't an option. She looked down at Ethan sitting beside her on the building's marble steps. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she whispered softly. "This isn't how I planned today." Ethan smiled innocently and squeezed her hand. "It's okay, Mum. I'll be super quiet." "I can even pretend I'm invisible." Sarah laughed, despite the anxiety twisting inside her chest. "You're impossible to ignore," she said, kissing the top of his head. She knew bringing a child to a professional interview could instantly ruin her chances. Employers wanted reliable employees, not mothers juggling childcare emergencies. At least that's what society had taught her over the years. Still, she had no choice. The lobby itself felt intimidating. Glass walls stretched towards the ceiling, reflecting the luxury and success that surrounded her. Executives in expensive suits walked confidently past as Sarah adjusted Ethan's neatly ironed shirt and straightened her own blazer that she had purchased secondhand 2 years earlier. The receptionist smiled politely before her expression shifted slightly when she noticed Ethan. "Oh," she said carefully. "Is he coming with you?" Sarah forced an embarrassed smile. "Unfortunately, yes. My childcare arrangements fell through this morning. I completely understand if this affects my application." The receptionist nodded, sympathetically. "I'll inform the hiring team." Sarah sat nervously in the waiting area as she noticed several candidates, stealing glances towards her son. Some whispered among themselves. Others smirked, as if her chances had disappeared the moment she walked through the door. One candidate leaned towards another and quietly said, "No company hires someone who brings their kid to an interview." Sarah heard every word. She lowered her eyes and reminded herself why she was here. Not for pride, not for approval, but for Ethan. Suddenly, Ethan leaned over and whispered, "Mom, don't worry." She smiled weakly. "I'm trying not to." You're the smartest person I know. Sarah laughed softly. You don't know very many people. That's true, he said seriously. But if I did, you'd still win. His words warmed her heart more than he could possibly understand. After several minutes, a sharply dressed woman approached the waiting area. Sarah Bennett? She called. Sarah stood immediately. That's me. The woman paused when she saw Ethan holding his mother's hand. You've brought your son? Yes, Sarah replied honestly. I know it's unprofessional and I apologize sincerely. I had no other option today, the interviewer studied her expression. For several seconds before speaking, the CEO has requested that all final candidates meet him personally today. Sarah blinked in surprise. She hadn't expected to meet the company's CEO. Will that still be possible? She asked hesitantly. The interviewer smiled slightly. That decision isn't mine. Please follow me. As they walked through the elegant office corridors, Sarah's heart raced faster with every passing second. Employees glanced curiously at Ethan, who smiled politely at everyone he passed. Finally, they arrived outside a massive office overlooking the city. Skyline! The CEO will see you now, the interviewer announced. Sarah took a deep breath before opening the door. Sitting behind a sleek wooden desk was one of the youngest CEOs in the industry, 42-year-old Michael Harrison. Known for transforming struggling businesses into multi-million-pound success stories, Michael was respected, admired, and feared throughout the corporate world. But what Sarah didn't know was that Michael's life had recently been shattered by something money could never fix, and the moment his eyes landed on Ethan standing beside his mother, something inside him unexpectedly changed. What happened next would shock everyone in that office. Michael Harrison looked up from the file on his desk and immediately noticed two things. First, Sarah Bennett looked nervous but determined. Second, the little boy standing beside her wasn't hiding behind his mother like most children would. Instead, Ethan smiled politely and said, "Good morning, sir." Michael smiled back. "Well, good morning, young man," Sarah quickly apologized. "Mr. Harrison, I'm so sorry for bringing my son today. My childcare arrangements fell through at the last minute. I understand if this affects my chances. I simply couldn't afford to miss this interview." Michael leaned back in his chair and studied her for a moment. "Tell me something, Sarah," he asked calmly. "If your son became ill tomorrow, what would you do?" She looked surprised by the question. "I'd stay home and take care of him." "What if there was an important meeting?" "He would still come first. What if it cost you your job?" Sarah didn't hesitate for even a second. "Then I'd find another job. My son only gets one mother." For a brief moment, Michael was silent. Her answer struck a place in his heart that had remained untouched for years. "You realize," he continued, "that many candidates would tell me what they think I want to hear." Sarah nodded. "I've spent too many years struggling to pretend to be someone I'm not," she replied honestly. "I'm a single mother. My son is my greatest responsibility and my greatest blessing. If that makes me less desirable as an employee, then I understand. But I won't apologize for loving my child." The room fell silent. Michael glanced down at Ethan, who was quietly looking at the impressive view from the office windows. "What do you think of your mom?" Michael asked. Ethan immediately turned around and smiled proudly. "She's my hero." Michael chuckled softly. "That's a big title." "It's true," Ethan said confidently. "She works really hard. Sometimes she doesn't buy things for herself so I can have what I need. She always tells me that being kind matters more than being rich." Sarah's face turned red with embarrassment. "Ethan, no, Mum," he continued innocently. "It's true. You even gave your winter coat to that lady outside the grocery store last Christmas." Michael's expression changed slightly. "You did?" Sarah laughed nervously. "It wasn't a big deal." "It was freezing outside," Ethan added. "She said she'd rather be cold for one day than know someone else was cold for many days." Michael couldn't help but smile. What Sarah didn't know was that Michael had been carrying his own heartbreak for nearly 2 years. His wife had passed away after a long battle with cancer, leaving him to raise their daughter alone. In the process of growing his company and trying to cope with his grief, He had become emotionally distant from almost everyone around him, including his own 12-year-old daughter, Lily. The board of directors had recently criticized Michael for creating a workplace culture that prioritized productivity over humanity. Employee retention was falling and morale was lower than ever. The company was profitable, but something important had been lost along the way. Looking at Sarah and Ethan sitting in front of him, Michael realized he wasn't looking at weakness. He was looking at resilience. He decided to do something unexpected. "Sarah," he said, "tell me why I should hire you." She took a deep breath. "Because I know what responsibility looks like. Because I know how to solve problems when life doesn't go according to plan. Because I've learned how to remain calm during difficult circumstances. And because I understand that behind every successful business are people who deserve compassion, respect, and support." Michael smiled. Interesting answer. Then he looked down at Ethan. "And if I hired your mom, would she be good at her job?" Ethan grinned. "She's the best at everything." The entire room laughed. Just then, one of the senior executives entered the office carrying several documents. He immediately noticed Ethan and frowned slightly. "Mr. Harrison, perhaps we should continue this discussion privately," he suggested politely. Before Michael could respond, Ethan quietly stood up. "Sir," Ethan said respectfully, "can I tell you something?" The executive seemed surprised. "Of course. My mom always says that when people are treated kindly, they do amazing things. I think companies work like families. If you take care of people, they'll take care of everyone else." The room became completely silent. No one expected such wisdom from a 7-year-old child. Michael looked at Sarah and smiled. Where did he learn that? Sarah laughed softly. "Mostly from listening when he isn't supposed to." For several moments, Michael stared out of the office window. Memories flooded his mind, his late wife reminding him that success meant nothing if you couldn't be present for the people who loved you most. He had spent years building a company while slowly forgetting why he started it in the first place. Then, he made a decision that would shock everyone present. "Sarah Bennett," he announced, "I'd like to offer you the position." Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really?" "Actually," Michael continued, smiling warmly, "I'd like to offer you something better." The senior executive looked confused. "We've recently been planning a new initiative to improve workplace culture and employee well-being. I'd like you to lead it alongside your management responsibilities." Sarah was speechless. "But I brought my son to an interview." "Exactly," Michael replied. "You didn't let an impossible situation stop you from showing up. You didn't lie about who you are. And your son has reminded everyone in this office of something we've forgotten, that humanity belongs in the workplace." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she hugged Ethan tightly. A few weeks later, Sarah began working at the company. Under her leadership, family-friendly policies were introduced, including flexible working arrangements, childcare support, and mental health programs for employees. Employee satisfaction rose dramatically, but perhaps the greatest change happened in Michael's own life. Inspired by Sarah and Ethan, he began spending more time with his daughter Lily. He stopped missing her school performances and finally learned that success at home mattered just as much as success in business. Months later, Lily and Ethan became close friends, and Michael often joked that hiring Sarah was the most profitable decision he had ever made, not because of money, but because it helped him rediscover what truly matters. Sometimes, life's greatest opportunities arrive disguised as our biggest inconveniences. Sarah thought bringing her son to an interview would ruin her future. Instead, it became the very reason her future changed forever. Never be ashamed of the struggles that shaped your character. The things that make you different may one day become the things that make you unforgettable. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Kindness of Power and become part of our growing family of kindness and inspiration. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment telling us which city and country you're watching from. Your story matters, and we'd love to hear it. Remember, kindness has the power to change lives.